Yes, good morning and welcome back to the program. It's now gone 8:34 in Johannesburg, South Africa. And looking at an article on the ABC News wires, arrests and clashes follow anti-Netanyahu protests in Israel. Police say they arrested more than a dozen Israelis in countrywide protests that drew thousands of people in a growing and persistent show of force against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his handling of the coronavirus. I'm joined now online by Dr. Carol Goldfuss. She works as a senior researcher in the Faculty of Humanities at the University of the Free State and is currently in Israel. Good morning, Doctor. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Can you
All right,
hear me?
so tell us the coronavirus situation right now in Israel. People are protesting out on the streets. What's it like there at the moment?
Well, the coronavirus has changed the way the world has, how Israel is. First of all, we are now in the middle of a second wave, and the effect on the economy of the country has been quite disastrous. Young people particularly, are unable to meet their commitments of paying their mortgages, and businesses are closed. And so finally, the young people have decided to protest. There is a feeling of total disconnection between the government, the prime minister, and the people. And that is what the greatest thing of a democracy is: the ability to be able to stand, to protest, and to be able to do it. So that's really what it's about. It's a fact that the coronavirus changed the world, has made the world a much harder place. People are lonely, and the directives coming from the government has not been clear enough.
We've seen that police have been pretty hard-handed in trying to clear the protests. There have been use of water cannons to drive people out, causing injury to several people. Police say that the protesters are ignoring calls to disperse. Are they acting, fairly and allowing these people to actually voice their concerns, as you say, with regards to the economy and the struggling circumstances that people around the world, in fact, are experiencing at the same time?
Well, I think that there is police brutality, and I think that that has to be stopped. I think that also the protesters have to also know that there are rules, but that's part of what the country is now fighting against. We cannot go down a road of totalitarianism. We have to be able to allow people to say what they want to say. And this is what apparently the coronavirus has given us, is the ability now to say we want our country to be a country of equality, because that's really what Israel is. Israel is a democracy, and a democracy means that it's the voice of the people. And I do think that bringing in what they have brought in is something that is perhaps what the protesters are protesting against.
Israel, yes, very truly, maybe a functioning democracy in terms of people being allowed to vote. But as you know, there's an occupation also taking place on the other side, and the rights of the Palestinians living in Israel are seemingly different to those of the Israelis of Jewish descent and religious persuasion. But nonetheless, who are the people behind these protests? Do they have a name? Is there some type of organization to them, or is it just young people taking to the streets?
No, they're different organizations that have now come together, young people who feel that that the country is not the country that they would like it to be. You talk about occupation. I am a lecturer, and I lectured here in Israel as well. A lot of my students are Arab students. I have built programs of teaching Arabic to young children who have difficulties. And the students that come to the universities are equal, we're treated equally, and I've got a lot of friends who were my previous students. I keep in touch with many, many people. But the fact that there is inequality throughout, that the government does not provide the means and is not giving the people, all the people, the Arab population as well as the Jewish population, are not giving enough means and the contact with the government and the people is at the moment very problematic. And this is what the young people, it's mainly young people. You must understand there are two groups. There's one group of people whose livelihoods have been taken from them. And as you had in a previous speaker, they are unable to provide food for their families. And that has caused people to say, no, until now, you cannot ask for taxes back, as our Prime Minister did, when people are starving. But in everything that I have done and I do with I teach, we've always had equality in the teaching.
Do any of the protests relate to Prime Minister Netanyahu's charges of fraud and breach of trust? Are people angry about that as well? Or is it, are these protests strictly confined to economic woes as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic?
No, that's the whole beauty of these protests. The young people say, you've taken away from us honesty. You are now being indicted. You must get out. And if you would look at the placards, I am not protesting. I have to be careful because I'm in the at-risk group in the COVID of this coronavirus. But the young people want different leaders, leaders that will provide them with honesty, no bribery. And that's the great thing now of democracy, is the fact that these people can protest. And despite the fact that the police have shown at the beginning tremendous brutality, and it's getting less because the people are complaining about it, that's the only way that we can really survive as a democracy and as an answer to decency, to look at everybody. That's the Jewish religion. The Jewish religion is to have good relations with each one. And I think that the young people here feel that that's the kind of country they want to live in. And that includes everybody.
Who would be the alternative if they are calling for a change in leadership and stepping down of Prime Minister Netanyahu? Then what would be the alternative? Who are the young people in the country now calling for to replace him?
Well, that's the problem. I don't know. I have I watched these protests, and I think that what they want to do is to get, first of all, Netanyahu and this government out, because people feel that through the dealings with the coronavirus, we have not had any answers. So, and everything that Netanyahu seems to say does not filter down to the people. It doesn't meet the needs of the people. What the alternative is, I really cannot answer you that because I don't know.
Dr. Carol Goldfuss speaking to us out of Israel this morning. We thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. You go well, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, and that was Dr. Carol Goldfuss speaking to us. She was or works as a senior researcher at the Faculty of Humanities, the University of the Free State, currently in Israel, stating that Israel is democracy and allows people to protest. I wonder what would happen if the Palestinians decided to protest, if it would be allowed, and if that would be permissible in the Israeli democracy.